The great floating city of Neo-Varanasi did not fall from the sky because of a broken machine or an exhausted spell. It plummeted because someone stole the weight of its history. For 7,000 years, the city hovered precisely 3 miles above the burning glass deserts of the lower realm, anchored only by the immense density of its ancestral memories. But on the morning of the solar alignment, every citizen woke to a terrifying lightness in their chest, realizing they could no longer remember the names of their grandfathers. Instantly, the massive marble foundations groaned, and the entire metropolis dropped 500 feet in a single, heart-stopping second. High Priest Kavi stood at the edge of the collapsing celestial terrace, clutching a parchment that was rapidly turning into blank, white silk. The ink of the ancient chronicles was literally evaporating before his eyes, fleeing the page like smoke from a dying fire. If the memory of the first foundation vanished completely, the city would slam into the jagged obsidian wastes below, obliterating 1 million souls. Kavi looked down at his own hands and gasped, realizing that the skin on his fingertips was turning translucent, revealing the pale glow of empty air beneath. He was forgetting himself, and the countdown to the final impact had already begun. To stop the descent, Kavi had to descend into the forbidden core of the city, a place known only as the Well of Forgotten Loom. He ran through the panic-stricken streets where houses were detaching from their foundations and drifting upward like useless balloons. People screamed as their personal items, heavy brass urns and iron trunks, lost their earthly weight and floated into the sky. Kavi reached the grand brass seal of the lower vaults, a door that had not been opened since the age of the Great Migration. He pressed his palms against the cold metal, forcing his fading mind to recall the sequence of the 5 primal vowels. The massive brass doors hissed open, releasing a blast of frigid, ozone-scented air that nearly knocked the high priest off his feet. Before him lay a spiraling staircase made entirely of compressed cloud matter, winding down into a subterranean abyss beneath the floating island. As Kavi hurried down the steps, the air grew thicker, filled with the faint, ghostly echoes of forgotten lullabies and ancient battle cries. The walls were lined with thousands of tiny glass vials, each one pulsing with a unique, iridescent vapor. These were the distilled memories of the city, the literal ballast that kept their civilization afloat. At the center of the vault stood the Alabaster Loom, a colossal machine of ivory gears and silver threads that wove the collective consciousness of the realm into physical gravity. But the loom was silent, its great shuttle jammed by a thick, crystalline growth of deep violet ice. Standing before the frozen machine was an intruder, a figure clad in garments woven from the dark, negative spaces between stars. The thief held a massive sphere of hollow glass, and inside that sphere, a swirling vortex of golden light was trapped. It was the Prime Remembrance, the very first memory of the world, which gave the city its ultimate weight. The thief turned, revealing a face covered by an ivory mask carved into the likeness of a weeping owl. "Who are you?" Kavi demanded, his voice trembling as another tremor shook the vault, causing several memory vials to shatter on the floor. The thief chuckled, a sound like dry autumn leaves scraping across a tombstone. "I am the Archivist of Scars," the figure replied, "and I am simply returning this realm to its natural state of oblivion. Your people have lived on the borrowed weight of the past for too long, hiding above the clouds while the true world rots below." With a sudden gesture, the Archivist raised a staff of blackened bone, unleashing a wave of violet energy that shattered the staircase behind Kavi. The High Priest leapt forward, barely catching the edge of the loom's central platform as the cloud steps dissolved into grey mist. The city above groaned again, dropping another 1,000 feet, the sound of tearing metal echoing down through the ventilation shafts. Kavi knew he had less than 3 minutes before the city struck the desert glass. He scrambled to his feet, drawing a silver drafting compass from his robes, his only weapon against the Master of Shadows. The Archivist lunged, swinging the bone staff with lethal precision, but Kavi blocked the blow with the reinforced metal of his compass. Sparks flew as the two figures clashed beneath the giant, silent gears of the Alabaster Loom. The thief was stronger, fueled by the stolen energy of 1,000,000 forgotten lives, but Kavi had an advantage. He lived for the preservation of history, and every spark of friction awakened a fragment of his training. He realized the violet ice jamming the loom was not cold, it was made of frozen regrets, the densest matter in existence. To melt the ice of regret, one must introduce the warmth of unconditional hope. Kavi closed his eyes, ignoring the strikes of the archivist, and focused on his most vivid memory of the city, the annual festival of the first sprout. He recalled the laughter of children, the smell of roasted saffron cakes, and the sight of 1,000 paper lanterns rising into the twilight. He channeled this warmth through his hand and slammed his bare palm against the violet crystal jamming the primary gear. The ice cracked with a sound like thunder. The archivist shrieked in agony as the warmth of the memory shattered his spell, sending a backlash of golden light through the vault. The violet ice melted instantly into a harmless stream of clear water, and the massive ivory gears of the alabaster loom began to turn once more. The silver threads whipped through the air, weaving frantically to re-establish the connections between the citizens and their past. Above them, the terrifying descent of the city slowed, the foundations groaning as the artificial gravity began to reassert itself. But the thief was not defeated yet. Enraged by the destruction of the ice, the archivist smashed the hollow glass sphere against the floor, releasing the Prime Remembrance in a violent explosion of golden energy. The raw, uncompressed memory of the world's creation flooded the chamber, threatening to dissolve the minds of both men. Kavi fell to his knees, his consciousness overwhelmed by visions of cosmic oceans, continental collisions, and the birth of the first stars. The weight of this memory was too immense, it was pulling the city down faster than the loom could weave. The floating city was now falling at terminal velocity, only 200 feet above the jagged glass spires of the desert. The friction of the air was heating the lower hull to a dull red glow, and the heat was rising through the floors. In the vault, the archivist attempted to flee through a tearing rift in space, leaving the realm to its doom. Kavi realized there was only one way to stabilize the Prime Remembrance. It could not exist as raw energy, it needed a living vessel to anchor it to the present era. With a final, desperate act of will, Kavi threw himself into the center of the golden vortex. He opened his mind completely, allowing the infinite weight of 7,000 years of history to pour into his physical body. His veins flared with brilliant golden light, and his eyes turned into spheres of pure, radiant energy. The pain was excruciating, as if his very soul was being rewritten by a cosmic scribe, but he held on, forcing the massive energy into a stable configuration aligned with the loom's silver threads. The effect was instantaneous. The alabaster loom spun at an impossible speed, absorbing the anchored energy from Kavi's body and projecting a massive, shockwave of silver gravity across the entire floating island. Exactly 50 feet above the desert floor, the city of Neo-Varanasi came to a dead, shuddering halt. The glass spires below shattered from the immense pressure of the sudden deceleration, but the city remained whole, suspended securely on a new, unbreakable foundation of living memory. When the light finally faded, the archivist was gone, his rift sealed by the restoration of time. Kavi lay on the platform, his body permanently altered, his skin shimmering with faint silver runes of the ancient script. He had saved his people, but at a great cost. He was now the living chronicle, carrying the weight of every life, every dream, and every sorrow the city had ever known. As the citizens above began to remember their names and celebrate their survival, the High Priest stood up, ready to guide his city back to the highest heavens.